Why Nations Fail by Acemoglu and Robinson. Chapter 4 Small Differences and Critical Junctures, The Weight of History, the World the Plague Created. The authors are of the view, how institutions change through political conflict and how the past shapes the present. The authors continue with, The World the Plague Created, Small Differences and Critical Junctures. The Black Death and its Spread. The plague, transmitted by fleas on rats, reached Tana in 1346 and spread from China to the Mediterranean. By 1347, it reached Constantinople, and by spring of 1348, it was spreading through France, North Africa, and Italy, wiping out about half of the population. The plague's impact on England. King Edward III asked the Archbishop of Canterbury to organize prayers and write letters for priests to help people cope with the disease. The plague quickly wiped out about half the English population, affecting the feudal order, which was highly extractive. The scarcity of labor and the demand for change. The plague led to a significant reduction in fines and unpaid labor at Ensham Abbey. Peasants demanded changes in their employment obligations and wages, leading to the enactment of the Statute of Labourers in 1351. The Peasants' Revolt and the Statute of Labourers. The Peasants' Revolt broke out in 1381, leading to the capture of most of London. The revolt ended without enforcement of the Statute of Labourers, leading to a decline in feudal labour services and an emergence of an inclusive labour market. The impact on Eastern Europe. The plague had a similar demographic impact as in England and Western Europe. Eastern landlords expanded their holdings and took over large tracts of land, leading to encroaching on existing freedoms. The second serfdom. Eastern landlords increased their control over the labor force to expand their supply, leading to the second serfdom. By 1600, nearly half of the gross output was unpaid forced labor. Institutional divergence. By 1600, Western and Eastern Europe were worlds apart in terms of political and economic institutions. Critical juncture and economic changes. The Black Death is a prime example of a critical juncture disrupting economic or political balance. The making of inclusive institutions in England. England's economic growth and political revolution. 17th century economic growth, the result of political revolution. Institutions were based on intense conflict, contesting authority. English Civil War, 1642 to 1651, and Glorious Revolution, 1688, were the culmination of these struggles. The Glorious Revolution opened the political system to a broad cross-section of society. Foundation for creating a pluralistic society and accelerating political centralization. Economic institutions and the Industrial Revolution. Government adopted economic institutions that encouraged investment, trade, and innovation. State enforced property rights, protected law, and applied English law to all citizens. Promoted mercantile activities and domestic industry, facilitating industrial growth. The Industrial Revolution. Inclusive markets allowed talent allocation to the right business lines. Inclusive economic institutions were founded on inclusive political institutions. Impact of small differences on global institutions. Impact of the British Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution increased world inequality due to the adoption of innovations and new technologies. The response of different nations to these technologies was shaped by their historical paths of their institutions. Initial differences in political and economic institutions. English political institutions were on their way to greater pluralism by 1688. All three countries were ruled by relatively absolutist monarchs. The assemblies of citizens demanding more rights and control over the monarchy had somewhat different powers and scopes. The role of trade in the 17th century. The expansion of world trade, particularly in the Atlantic, started after 1600. In England, Atlantic trade and colonization created a large group of wealthy traders with few links to the crown. In Spain and France, English traders resented royal control and demanded changes in political institutions and the restriction of royal prerogatives. The interplay of small institutional differences with critical junctures. Critical junctures disrupt the existing balance of political or economic power in a nation. The persistence of this feedback loop creates a vicious circle. The divergence between Western and Eastern Europe. Institutional differences in societies create powerful political and economic institutions. Institutional drift influences how societies react to changes in economic or political circumstances during critical junctures. The contingent path of history, the role of contingency. Critical junctures outcomes are influenced by historical events and existing economic and political institutions. The outcome is contingent, influenced by the success of opposing forces, effective coalition formation, and leadership's ability to structure events. The Glorious Revolution of 1688 in England exemplifies the role of contingency, with the English victory linked to the rise of Atlantic trade. Post-independence governments often repeat and intensify abuses of predecessors, narrowing political power distribution and undermining economic incentives. Critical junctures can initiate political and economic change, paving the way for economic growth. Inclusive institutions can reverse course and become more extractive due to challenges. Understanding the lay of the land, the impact of the Industrial Revolution. Emergence of the market economy. The market economy based on inclusive institutions and sustained economic growth in 18th century England spread globally. The Industrial Revolution had different effects on the world, similar to the Black Death and Atlantic trade expansion in England and Spain. Institutional differences. Institutions in different parts of the world determined the impact of the Industrial Revolution. Small differences amplified over time by prior critical junctures. These institutional differences persist to the present due to the vicious and virtuous circles, albeit imperfectly. Institutional trajectories. Some parts of the world developed institutions similar to those in England, but by a different route. European settler colonies like Australia, Canada, and the United States developed institutions similar to England at the time of the Industrial Revolution. Influence of European colonization. European colonization set the stage for institutional divergence in the Americas. Extractive institutions emerged in Latin America, causing patterns of inequality. Countries like Argentina and Chile fared better than most other countries in the region due to their few indigenous people or mineral riches. Africa's institutional failure. Africa lagged behind the rest of the world in terms of technology, political development, and prosperity. Centralized states formed late and tenuously, often as absolutist as the Congo and often short-lived, usually collapsing. African institutional evolution and the Atlantic slave trade. The Atlantic slave trade expanded economic opportunities for the Kingdom of Congo, leading to a shift from extractive economic institutions to enslaving people in masse. The discovery of the Americas may have helped England develop inclusive institutions, but it made institutions in Africa even more extractive. The structures of colonial rule left Africa with a more complex and pernicious institutional legacy in the 1960s than at the start of the colonial period. Industrialization in Asia in the 19th century. Absolutism, similar to those in Africa or Eastern Europe, hindered industrialization in Asia. China, India, and Japan had already drifted apart institutionally by the 19th century. The U.S. threat cemented opposition to Tokugawa rule in Japan, leading to a political revolution, the Meiji Restoration. The evolution of economic growth and stability in the Middle East. Rapid growth episodes often end abruptly and are reversed, similar to how steps towards inclusive economic institutions can ignite rapid growth. The Ottoman Empire's economic institutions were highly extractive, leading to a stagnation economically by the time of the Industrial Revolution. Institutional theory and world inequality. Institutional theory provides a comprehensive explanation for these phenomena. The theory explains how inclusive political institutions emerged during the Glorious Revolution in England. The Industrial Revolution and other new technologies have not spread to places where a minimum degree of state centralization hasn't been achieved. Thank you.